very, very quick second. Are we ready?
We are
I
ready.
think. I'm Amy Hedemio. I'm the scientific director here at Body Science. We are a functional medical clinic here in Miami, Florida. And
I'm Kyle Jordan. I'm the nurse manager here.
all right, and so normally we do these in our conference room, but today we decided we're in Gunther's Garden. It's one of the rooms that we have over here, and we decided, I don't know, let's switch just because let's switch. And so now we've come to a different room, and let me see, are we situated on both laptops?
Yeah.
But okay, our goal today is to answer some of the more common questions. All right, Facebook folks, you guys do not have access to the slides. Fortunately, we really only have 3 of them to discuss who we are and where we're coming from. And everything else, we've largely moved away from slides.
Yeah.
Kyle and I prefer just, I don't know, more of a discussion. I personally find that it's easier to talk to everybody when we're just kind of having a conversation rather than going through a lot of slides. And personally, for me, I find sometimes I learn better like that. So for everybody that is on the Zoom side of things, you'll be able to see the slides. For everybody on the Facebook side of things, I'll describe the slides. And so just starting out, that's our first slide. That's us in that building over there. Again, we are a comprehensive functional medical clinic down here in Miami, Florida. We're Body Science, and we made the decision back in January to start getting education out there in the world of MTHFR. We pride ourselves on being a research-driven scientific center. Our motto, the bridge between pure science and the practice of medicine. And so our goal with all of these calls is to bring as much accurate, scientifically based information into the world of MTHFR. So for everybody that has MTHFR, and us, right, exactly, you know what you're dealing with, and you have the information that you need to make the best decisions. Yeah. Okay, so that's slide number 1. Slide number 2 is
my favorite one.
Yeah, it's good. It's the same. It's the same slide. It just says my name, this is Kyle's name. Okay, slide number 3 is just our title. And again, MTHFR homocysteine, the role of homocysteine in inflammation, and how do we answer your question? So succinctly, MTHFR homocysteine in inflammation. And we start off by showing 2 lab results. We took a look at these in the last webinar as well. And so just to orient everybody, what you're looking at over here is an individual that does not have MTHFR. Okay, they do not have an alteration in MTHFR, so for that reason, they can make 100% of the folate reductase enzyme. And then by comparison, will you show us the next one?
Definitely.
All right, this is an individual with 2 copies of C677T. I presented to you on slide. I presented to you in person. And C677T is the most involved form of MTHFR, meaning it's the variant that has the largest restriction in the folate reductase enzyme. And so for everybody that can see the slide, what you're seeing is if an individual that does not have MTHFR makes 100% folate reductase, and remember, just as a throwback to our previous, folate reductase is the enzyme that allows folate to be converted into a methylated form, which is the usable form of 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate. And so if you just have folate, but you can't activate it with the enzyme folate reductase, then you can't use it. And so a C677T double copy variant of MTHFR is the most affected or the most limited when it comes to making folate reductase as the enzyme that activates the B vitamin folate. And so you can see on this lab result, the enzyme activity or the availability to make folate reductase is limited to 25%.
Wow, wow. And getting right into it, because I know this was something that I was worried about before I had the chance to discuss with you my own lab results. Of course, I Googled it, and there was just this, well, a wealth of information. I don't want to say a wealth of information because didn't enrich me at all. It was just a lot of misinformation talking about what homocysteine isn't, what it is, why it's good, why it's bad, et cetera, et cetera. And so I came to you and you clarified it. And we kind of want to do the same thing and answer a lot of the most common questions that we get. And I think we'll start off with, Amy, what is homocysteine?
All right. So Homocysteine is an amino acid.
Okay.
It's a critical protein structure that bodies need. It is neither good or bad, right? It is an important ingredient. And so, when we're seeing folks here with MTHFR, the common explanation that I'll use, the body has a pantry of ingredients, and
Mm-hmm.
you're going to assemble those ingredients into whatever it is that you want to make. So if I have flour, maybe I take that flour and I make cake, or maybe I take that flour and I make cookies, or maybe I take that flour and I make pancakes. The bottom line is, flour isn't good or bad, but if I use it all up making one thing, pancakes, and then you come behind me and you want to make
I love
cake,
that.
like right now it's gone,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so there are certain base ingredients. And so the question is, what do base ingredients look like? So for anybody that cooks, right, whatever that is, it's like onions and garlic and
butter and salt, pepper,
eggs and all that kind of
Mhm.
stuff. So amino acids are the same. They are the basic ingredients that are assembled in order to signal and drive certain reactions.
Okay.
Right? Amino acids are going to be assembled into proteins. They can be modified through any number of channels. They can be acetylated, so you can put an acetyl group on them. You can hydroxylate them. You can phosphorylate them. So my point is, first you stick them together into a protein.
Okay.
Right. And then you turn them on or turn them off by adding groups onto them. But what they're actually made of, their base units, are just amino acids. And homocysteine is merely an amino acid.
Okay. All right. So if we have, seeing that it's an amino acid,
Yeah.
we have it for a reason. So homocysteine isn't just bad. Why do we even have it?
All right. So the body isn't necessarily trying to make homocysteine. The body is trying to assemble whatever protein that it wants.
Okay.
And it's going to go into the pantry and it's going to use any number of amino acids and stick them together to make its protein.
Okay.
Homocysteine is interesting because it is a sulfur carrying amino acid. And so there are a lot of reactions that require sulfur. And when you think about homocysteine kind of being in the middle of the things that can be on left or right side of it, methionine and cysteine are kind of on either side. So homocysteine is an important amino acid that contains a sulfur group. And it can be modified into cysteine because cysteine requires sulfur. So if you're a body that needs cysteine to make glutathione, as an example, right?
Okay.
Cysteine is the rate limiting step in order to make glutathione. Glutathione is one of the body's most important antioxidants. You cannot make glutathione without cysteine.
Wow.
If you're a body and you need cysteine, so you need a sulfur molecule, you're commonly going to go to homocysteine to get it, right? So that's kind of where a lot of cysteine donation is coming from, homocysteine. And likewise, you can take methionine. So methionine is coming from the diet. Fish and meat and eggs, so things that you're eating, and you're going to get a bunch of methionine, right? And then that methionine can be modified into homocysteine. Okay, I'm not trying to be confusing. I don't want to throw a bunch of things out there. Here's what I am saying. Saying the liver is kind of in control of a lot of this. And so the liver is going to get methionine from a lot of the foods that we're eating. Again, beef and chicken and dairy. And then the liver is kind of the reservoir. It's like the pantry in the kitchen, right? And it's doling out whatever. So again, if you go in there and you say, hey, I need flour because I'm going to make pancakes with all the flour, and I come behind you and I say, well, now I want to make a cake, but I can't because you used up one of the key ingredients. So you can take homocysteine and move it through a cystathione pathway into cysteine. You can down model methionine into homocysteine. You can hold sulfur in either of those three areas. You can upregulate cysteine into glutathione. You can upregulate methionine into adenosine. Methionine, the long and short is that's where people are getting their SAMe groups from, or their methyl donors. So these, right? So imagine,
wow,
right?
Okay.
And then if you have too much homocysteine, so then what you have is an adenosyl group on the homocysteine, and it competes with that version of methionine, and now you can't make enough SAMe. So here's the long and short. The body is going into its pantry of ingredients. It's getting what it needs, when it needs it to do certain jobs. And the individual ingredients are not good, they're not bad, they're just ingredients. The challenge comes for anybody with MTHFR that is a double C677T. And here's the reason. In order to do something called remethylating homocysteine. So when homocysteine is too high, the liver is going to try and remethylate it to get rid of homocysteine, right? Too much homocysteine can very definitely make inflammation. Right? And so what you're going to do at that point is you're going to downgrade homocysteine by methylating it unless you have a major methylation deficiency. C677T as a double copy. And now you have too much homocysteine. You want to try and break it down. The liver is going to do that by using its two cofactors. You're going to need B12 and folate.
Oh, gosh.
Except in a world of MTHFR where you can't activate folate.
It's all coming together.
Right? Okay. Yeah. And so then you start building up in one ingredient that competes with a different ingredient. Now, going back to the idea of sticking an S-adenyl group onto homocysteine, if you keep doing that, now you can't make that same version of methionine. Again, SAMe being a methyl donor. And so the body is going to keep balancing between how much methionine, how much homocysteine, how much methionine, how much homocysteine. The issue for too much homocysteine is, again, getting rid of it requires that remethylation process, which is so reliant on B12 and folate. And so when folks come on over here and what they have is a double C copy, I'll always find out if homocysteine is in play. Homocysteine, when it is uncontrolled, will lead to inflammation. So if you have MTHFR and you are not a double C copy, this is not a problem. It's probably one of the most common questions that I get. And I think it's where a lot of misinformation about MTHFR has come about. And I think it's maybe the reason why a lot of traditional or allopathic practitioners have gotten annoyed in the functional world. Because in the functional world, it seems like all MTHFR is bad in the respect that it can cause increased homocysteine, which then leads to inflammation, but that's not true. Instead, it really is limited, that outcome, to just a double C677T copy, because going back to the test result, right, those are the folks that have the least amount of folate reductase. They can't methylate folate. That methylated folate in combination with B12 or cobalamin are required to remethylate homocysteine in order to break it down.
Wow. Okay. Okay. So we see where the problem comes in with the double C copy, and the fact that homocysteine, it's neither good nor bad. It's how we can use it, basically.
It's how we can use it.
It's how we can use it, and in the ways that we're using it now. Inflammation, that's a vague term. We get a lot of questions about it.
Yeah.
I had my own questions about it. What should I look out for? So what is inflammation in that sense as it pertains to homocysteine?
Okay.
What would you, a patient presents here and says, my homocysteine levels are high, I want to check for inflammation.
All right,
what would that look like?
Let's start with the lab value of an elevated homocysteine, right? Because I think one of our most common questions is, my homocysteine blood level is a 7.
Right. And that was the next common question, is how high is too high? When should I be worried, et cetera? So we'll integrate that here. Thank you, Amy.
Yeah. All right. So a true lab value is over 15. That's normally where a lab will flag. But we know in the MTHFR world, anything above 12 can really start to become a problem. I look for numbers around 7 or 8 or even lower. What I don't like is when people over methylate and then they wind up with these really, really, really low homocysteine levels. Remember, homocysteine is kind of an intermediary between methionine and cysteine, and cystathione being the step just before cysteine. So the long and short is, you don't want to take the sulfur holder, right? Because imagine how you in phase 2 of the liver detoxify. What we all know on this call is that you could methylate, but methylation is not the only way to remove toxins, right? You can use sulfur, like a CBS pathway, right? And so you need sulfur, so you need things like homocysteine.
And that would be sulfuronidation?
Totally. And then think about the fact that if you want to use glucuronidation, you need cysteine to do that. So there are a lot of phase 2 liver detoxification processes that are aside from methylation that require sulfur. And because they require sulfur somewhere in that pathway, they likely are going to be reliant on homocysteine. So here's what you don't want to do, right? You don't want to take a homocysteine that's within normal range. So a liver that's holding homocysteine because it's got the big sulfur donor waiting to make it into something, right? Like cysteine, the key for glutathione. And then you've got some body, meanwhile, that owns that liver that's taking all this methylation support, too much methylation support, and they're dragging that homocysteine down so low. Now the liver actually needs the sulfur donor from homocysteine, but all the homocysteine has been remethylated. Right. So then just kind of going back to not the inflammation part, but just lab values, I know I've said this before, but on MTHFR, right, if some is good, more is not better. Right. In our world of MTHFR, if some is good, chances are more is going to make you toxic. Okay, so
and we see that a lot.
Yeah, so you're not trying to get to a homocysteine level of a 0. Again, that's your reservoir. Homocysteine is the reservoir that you're going to use for an awful lot of things. And you want a body that can constantly modulate between, by using homocysteine in the middle, modulate up to methionine, modulate over to cysteine, modulate down the cystithione pathway, cysteine being kind of that crucial intermediary step. So again, if cysteine becomes too high and competes with methionine, you definitely have problems. But if homocysteine rather, is too low, now you can't get what you need as far as ingredients.
Wow. I remember when you explained that to me, it completely changed the way that I see MTHFR and homocysteine, because that's probably the biggest, baddest, scariest word that comes along with it. And you're able to break it down just like that. Neither good nor bad. It's that reservoir.
It's just an ingredient.
That's amazing.
Just an ingredient. And then the way that I commonly know folks that have a double C copy, because they've got a family history of heart attacks and strokes. Right. So, when cysteine elevates, and now we're talking about anything from me above 12, but I know in true clinical practice, it's above 15. Sometimes we'll see these numbers like 21, 25. Now what you're looking at is vessel disease, right? So whether you're making vessels hard or whether you're building up plaque, but homocysteine can do those two things when it elevates. And so again, we're not talking about folks with MTHFR. We're talking exclusively a double C copy of MTHFR, where homocysteine can reach these really high levels in blood because there isn't enough of the two cofactors, B12 and folate, aren't high enough to remethylate homocysteine and maintain a proper balance between homocysteine and methionine. And so all this homocysteine is floating around in the blood, and it's going to cause vascular damage. And so a common question to know if somebody has MTHFR in their family, when you think about your family tree, your mom and your dad, your grandparents, is there a strong history of heart attack and stroke? And what we'll commonly find is that there's one person in the family, my mom's mom had a heart attack. And in fact, her mom also had a stroke. You start hearing that kind of thing in an individual that's a poor detoxifier. So you already suspect they're MTHFR just because of all their other symptoms. Poor focus and poor concentration. They feel fatigued all the time, and they've got achiness, and they're moody, and they're irritable, and they're anxious. You're like, okay, this person may have MTHFR. And then you ask, and also, do you have a family history of strokes, heart attacks? And it's something like, my grandfather had a quadruple bypass, and my dad had a heart attack at age 50. And then you'll ask, like, I don't know, a 40-year-old, do you have any varicose veins? And they're like, yes, as a matter of fact, I do. And you start thinking that is likely a double C copy. And for me, what I'll always do is I'll ask those folks to go see cardiology and just be monitored. In our office, we'll normally order a cardiac calcium score. We'll do both the Boston and Cleveland, panels just to make sure they don't have elevations in the enzymes like myeloperoxidase and LPPLA2 that code for advancing plaque and plaque that's vulnerable. And again, we'll always send them out just so cardiology can take a look and make sure everything's okay.
I'm reliving stuff right now because that's one of the first questions you asked me.
Yeah.
Do you have a family history of heart disease or stroke? And I absolutely did.
Yeah.
I absolutely did. And so we're actually working now. I did those labs. We are working to bring down certain numbers.
Yeah.
We are working now to bring down, bring up particle size of our HDL.
Okay. So yeah. So we're talking cholesterol now.
Yeah,
We're talking
yeah.
about how do you make sure
Not to
you've
get
got.
off topic, but just to,
No, but yeah, this
get
is
a
what
little
I
more
was saying.
personal, so they know. I really relate personally to this, and we like to bring this out to you guys. So that's why I'll bring in a little bit about what we're doing with me, so that you know exactly what we'll be doing, and just what we do in general.
Yeah, and thanks for that. Thanks for using yourself as like a volunteer.
Yeah.
All right. So the old debate in cholesterol, particle number versus particle size. So in the past, it was always about particle number. How high is your cholesterol? How much LDL? How much HDL? What's the ratio? And a big paradigm shift has really been to particle size, right? So regardless of whether cholesterol is a 300 or a 100, how much really atherosclerotic VLDL or very low density lipoprotein, so the really sticky version of LDL. And to your point, it's not HDL, right? HDL is considered to be an antioxidant, so it can scrub out plaque. But the real question isn't, is an HDL a reasonable number in blood, 55 to a 75, but instead the particle size, is it big and fluffy enough, right? So you need alpha 1 HDL in order to break down plaque. And so what we're talking about is homocysteine that can lead to arterial and atherosclerosis, so hardening and plaque buildup in the vessels. Right. And then we're talking about the pathway for that is to oxidize LDL, which makes it sticky and get into the lining of the vessels. And then the opposite, or remodeling that plaque back out of the vessel, has to do with HDL, which is the antioxidant, providing it's big enough and fluffy enough. So what you're looking for is not a lot of HDL, you're looking for a lot of alpha 1 HDL. So yeah, that's right. We found out you had a double C677T copy. We knew your family history as far as cardiac. The primary focus really became making sure that you were able to properly methylate, getting a homocysteine under control so that you didn't have that same risk as your family members. And in doing that, yeah, we ran both Cleveland and Boston, and now what we're working on is HDL and really building that alpha 1. Yeah, that's true. That's a true fact. Yeah.
And so getting into the next question, thanks, Amy, for that. That's excellent explanation, as always. And so another common question, and it just kind of rides off of what we were just talking about, is over-methylating and under-methylating. We get that all the time. How would somebody know that they are over-methylating, or what are the caution signs what are the signs to be wary of with over-methylation?
So, toxins are the symptoms, right? So it's not MTHFR. We've been talking about that in the past. Instead, it's the toxin buildup. You can over-methylate and remove toxins at too fast a speed. You can over-methylate and break down homocysteine. You can over-methylate and cause all kinds of problems. Remember, what we're talking about again is ingredients. Okay, so methylation is just carbon donation. So you're donating a carbon into a reaction to start a reaction. Okay. So then the thing is, you want to be careful. Reactions take energy. Reactions take time. Reactions use up ingredients. So you're not trying to drive a bunch of reactions. You're trying to kind of clean a body and then let it do what it's good at doing, which is balance and find an equilibrium. And so you're not really trying to get into every single reaction and dump in a bunch of cofactors and drive things. And so when we're talking about methylation, very specifically, again, you're adding a carbon. That carbon is going to grab onto something and start transporting it around. As far as symptoms, I would tell you symptoms of MTHFR can oftentimes be over or under methylating. And there are similar symptoms for both. People will feel kind of sick and toxic on both sides of that equation. We were talking before, I've told you guys already, I have an association with the MTHFR store, which is online. But what happened on our side, I was trying to figure out the right dosing, and then a lot of people called that couldn't come on over to clinic. What they wanted was dosing. And so we crafted for that store the MTHFR packages that kind of give you a sense of how much to methylate and how much to not methylate. And the dosing for each of those packages is different depending on your genotype. So what I would tell you is, as far as over and under methylating, symptom-wise, they can look very similar. They look like the symptoms that most people clinically know as MTHFR, just generally feeling lousy. You can, if you're a C677T double mutation, you can use your homocysteine as a good measure of whether you're over methylating or not. For everybody else, I would tell you, actually, I like that protocol on the store. I would use that. It's a thing that we use all the time here. It never fails,
Yeah.
which I know is not a good thing to say in the world of clinical. You say that and something's going to fail, but the thing is, that amount of methylation seems to really match that genome, because remember, it's matched to the actual genetic limitation of folate reductase enzyme production. And so each genotype really does have a very specific amount of methylation. Do not exceed it, because then you start over methylating in areas that you don't want to.
All right. All right. So we have compiled that list. It's the most common questions that you've asked us. We're going to open it up now to questions.
Yeah.
Right. And we'll also give you a little bit of information about us. Right. So Body Science, Comprehensive Functional Medicine, and MTHFR experts. You can go to our website, www.bodyscience.life. Not .com, .life just sounded a lot better. It's what we do, right?
What we do. Yeah,
you can email us. Yeah, you can email us at info@bodyscience.life as well. You can find MTHFR products at mthfrstore.com. And of course, amazing information. I mean, beginner, intermediate, advanced, mthfrexperts.com. That's where you'll find the blog. Really good, really good discussions. You can bring that into the Facebook group, MTHFR Experts. We had an excellent group. I know we have Facebook Live over here, so you guys are very, associated with it. Keep asking your questions. We love to have that involvement. I know it helps a lot of patients to have a community like this that just kind of comes together under this same thing, a commonality, and then getting through it together, I guess, is how we could explain it.
Yeah.
So we went through most of the questions that everybody asks us, routinely. We'll open it up here to see if there's anybody that wants to ask. Let's see, let me open it up.
And our goal today, just to let everybody know, we're getting farther and farther away from slides. We started with that point that sometimes it's easier just to have a discussion on things. And so our goal is really 15, 20 minutes of answering the kinds of questions that we see the most of. I would say homocysteine for sure is up at the top of the list. I think,
sure.
Let's think about this. Homocysteine at the top. Fertility, I think, is
Fertility,
like our second one.
Yeah, baby.
Symptoms and supplements. I think that's really where the majority of questions come in, because I think it's where a lot of misinformation comes in. And we were talking before this, not misinformation because the folks that are here, like you guys, don't know how to interpret information, but there's just a lot of information. Some of it I find is spot on, and some of it is either confusing or just wrong. And so we're trying to find areas where there looks to be a lot of confusion, and then just scientifically clarify exactly what's going on, so you can use that to make the decisions that feel best for you.
All right, we have one question here. What's an easy way to test for MTHFR? I'm at home. I don't want to travel to primary due to COVID.
Okay. Well, you know that. I mean, you can go to Quest, LabCorp, but I get your point. For anybody that doesn't want to go out, you can use buccal swabs. Again, we have an affiliation with MTHFR store, so I disclose that just that you guys know. But there is a buccal swab that's available for MTHFR on the MTHFR store, and along with that result comes conversation, meaning you can call in afterwards and we'll explain exactly what that mutation means, what exactly your result means. So the time to use the buccal swab is if you don't want to get a blood test done. And it's true, during COVID, you're 100% right. Lots of people don't want to go out right now. Whoever else is in a lab drawing blood, you may not want to be in there with them in case they are there for COVID. So yeah, buccal swab is a fast and easy way to get your genome tested.
All right. Beautiful.
Yeah.
And I think we have time for one more here. Oh. Okay.
What are
the signs of high inflammation issues in the body? Hi.
Hey, Stace. Here's the thing. Most people know it, and they even describe it as inflammation. So they'll either have like just achiness, achy joints, or like, their hands are stiff, or they have like that low grade headache all the time. The people will come on in and they'll have all kinds of symptoms. achiness, poor focus, poor concentration, difficulty sleeping, that low grade headache. And then usually on our side, we'll clarify and we'll tell them, hey, listen, when you actually look at that compendium of symptoms, you realize what it feels like is inflammation. Do you feel inflamed? And most people will go, oh yeah, no, I get it. Like that's exactly when you really think about it. It is kind of that cluster of symptoms. It's so classic for inflammation. So again, high inflammation, people just feel old and tired. So even if it's a 20-year-old,
That sounds right.
It's like that. It just,
that sounds so right.
yeah. I mean, you wake up in the morning,
Yeah.
you've slept all night, you wake up and you still feel kind of tired.
Mm.
And then right by like 2, 3 in the afternoon is like you're spent and your focus and concentration is down to like 0. And so you're the person that's drinking coffee to stay awake or to get focus and concentration. You never really feel your best. You never really feel energized. And chances are everybody's already told you you're getting older. What do you expect? Even if you're like, I don't know, 10 years old, people are like, you're getting older, but it's not true. You're just inflamed. You're just becoming more and more inflamed, and the more inflammation, then the older and just more fatigued you feel. So the classic is fatigue, and then all the other offshoots of that. Yeah. What do you think?
As you say these things, of course, because I'm double C, positive, it makes me relive everything that you're saying. As a matter of fact, we've been through our detox process. We're managing it. I would think just gracefully, perfectly. So much so, I actually feel the next day, and I've told you this before. The next day, I'll wake up and I get that feeling. I feel, oh, my joints are hurting or something, and I have to think back and say, what did I come in contact with yesterday? What did I eat? And it's usually somewhere along that day, I cheated in my diet, or I messed up, or I did something by accident.
You had that stevia thing.
Yes, exactly. And so I'll feel it. I'll feel it right away. You're so right. And that's why I laughed when you were saying you feel old and tired, because that's exactly how I feel. I wake up in the morning and I don't have that, I wake up and just get going. And now I know, I said, something's going on, and that goes back to being the superpower. We've talked about it before. MTHFR being our superpower, right? We can detect when we are in a bad environment long before, 1, it'll make disease, and 2, long before anybody else does, right? So in terms of reframing this, seeing it as the end of my life, oh my gosh, it's actually, I have come to appreciate it, actually. It takes some work to live around it and make the necessary changes that I have to, but it is incredibly worth it. And just the fact that I can detect when I'm coming in contact with things right away, I don't want to actually give that up.
Yeah, right. And then it wasn't stevia, it was monk fruit.
Fruit with erythritol and something else, but it was in a packaging that said monk fruit, and then really small with like all these other all these other additives and artificial sweeteners in.
Yeah. So imagine then you eat something and you feel not great, and you blame it on MTHFR, but that's not actually the case. It's like MTHFR basically screaming out and saying, look, I don't like this. You don't like this. Like as a body, we don't like this. It's making us sick. Stop doing it. So if you really can see it from that vantage point, if you can get clean, and then once you have properly methylated, once you are clean, then when you do come in contact with things, you will, superpower for sure, you'll know it right away. And remember, again, if there's one takeaway from today, homocysteine is not good or bad. Homocysteine is just an amino acid. It's like an innocent bystander. It's kind of the in-between guy for methionine and cysteine and cysteine, right? It's just that. And so you're not trying to get rid of all of it. At the same time, if you're double C677T, you're not just trying to let it, build up to a point where it can cause problems. But in the same way that you want balance with all the other amino acids, remember, amino acids are going to link together to make proteins, period. And so you're not trying to banish them. You're not trying to find one amino acid, villainize the heck out of it and try and get rid of it. That's not what you're trying to do. It is your pantry. And so in that pantry, you have all these different amino acids. You got a bunch of fats, you've got a bunch of sugar groups, and then you have these other modifiers. Again, whether it's groups like sulfur or acetyl groups or hydroxy groups, right? You're just going to modify how you're making these proteins. And in the absence of those proteins, you can't do jobs. That's how, right? That's what bodies are using to do their work. And so don't try and get rid of all of your homocysteine. That'd be our our takeaway from today. Homocysteine, again, is it's a necessary amino acid, but it must be maintained in a controlled fashion, specifically in individuals with C677T. That is a double copy. All right. Anything else we have for
Alrighty.
today?
I think that's it. I think
that's
we're
it
good.
too.
If there's anything that you want to know, go on MTHFRexperts.com or the Facebook page and ask it there. We'll get back to you.
Yeah, we will.
Yeah.
All right. Bye, guys.
All right, everybody.